At 18, I took a babysitting job to earn extra cash. The next morning, cops dragged me out of bed. The girl said I assaulted her. I spent months in prison before one broken camera and a neighbor's footage flipped the whole story. Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd be the type to spill my life on here, but after what I went through, I honestly need to breathe. A simple babysitting shift became the darkest, most terrifying 7 months of my life, and somehow I'm still here, trying to make sense of it. I want people to see how quickly one lie can burn your whole life down, and how painfully slow the truth crawls back when you need it most. I was 18 when this all kicked off. A broke college freshman constantly hunting for small side gigs. Babysitting wasn't really a passion, it just sort of happened. My mom's friend, Mrs. Miller, needed a backup sitter one night. I went, kids liked me, everything went smoothly. After that, she'd call me whenever her regular sitter bailed. Her kids, Tommy, 7, and Emma, 5, were awesome. No chaos, no drama, just two funny little kids who thought I was a superhero because I let them stay up an extra 20 minutes and built ridiculous Lego skyscrapers. They started calling me Big Bro Cameron, and honestly, I like the nickname. So when Mrs. Miller called me that evening sounding stressed, I didn't even hesitate. "Sweetheart, I know it's last minute, but my sitter canceled. I wouldn't ask if it was. Important," she said. I checked my completely empty schedule, just a psych quiz to study for. "No problem," I told her. 7 to 9:30, I'll pay extra, deal. I tossed on a hoodie, grabbed my stuff, and headed over. The Millers lived in a warm little 2-story house with a white porch and one of those decorative seasonal flags by the door. This one said, "Bless this home," glowing in the porch light. Inside, the kids were already in pajamas watching cartoons. Mrs. Miller was half dressed up, one heel on and one in her hand as she rushed around. "You're a lifesaver, Cameron," she said, digging through her purse. "Dinner's done, teeth brushed. Just keep them alive until I'm back." I laughed. I can handle that. "Oh, Susan might be home later," she added as she headed out. "She's out with friends, but said she might swing by." My stomach clenched a little at the mention of her. Susan, the older daughter, 19, just a year above me. We'd crossed paths a bunch of times. She was complicated, the type who flirted with everyone, but with me it was constant, obvious, borderline uncomfortable. She'd text me during babysitting night stuff like, "How's my little brother?" or "Need company while the kids sleep." I always kept it polite or ignored her. Then there was the night 2 months earlier when she showed up while I was watching the kids. She said she needed to talk. With the kids sleeping, I figured fine, but she ended up confessing she liked me, like really liked me. And when I gently turned her down, she spiraled. Tears, yelling, pacing, accusing me of thinking I was too good because I was in college. It was a mess. A week later, though, she acted like nothing ever happened. Friendly, cheerful, even complimenting my haircut. I chalked it up to her being emotional and moved on. Anyway, around 9 p.m., the kids were basically asleep. I carried Tommy to his bed, then Emma, who mumbled, "Night, big bro," before knocking out completely. I was picking up crumbs when I heard the front door unlock. Susan walked in. She didn't say a word, just stood in the doorway for a moment staring at me. Her blue eyes looked different this time. No smile, no teasing, just this tight, tense expression like she'd been crying or was furious. "Hey," I said carefully. "Your mom mentioned you might come home." She didn't answer. She walked past me and headed upstairs slowly, each step sounding heavy. She didn't look back. All right, I thought. Bad night. Not my problem. I finished cleaning and put on an episode of The Office while waiting for Mrs. Miller. At exactly 9:30, headlights flashed through the window. Mrs. Miller came in glowing, hair perfect, makeup flawless, smiling like she'd just had the best night ever. "You're the best, Cameron," she said, dropping her purse. "Kids behave?" "Perfect," I said, "out like lights." She laughed softly, counting out cash from her wallet before handing it to me with a warm smile. "I owe you big time." "Don't worry about it," I said, slinging my backpack over my shoulder. I told her good night and stepped outside. The air was cool, the neighborhood still. My car sat under a street lamp, and I remember thinking how peaceful everything felt. Just an ordinary evening. I went home, took a shower, then opened my psychology textbook like it was any other night. Nothing felt off. No red flags, just a quiet house, 2 sleeping kids, and a broke college student doing his job. If you'd asked me then, I would have sworn the night was forgettable. Nothing strange, nothing suspicious. But the next morning, that's when everything shattered. It started with pounding, deep, aggressive pounding that made the walls shake. Not the kind that sounds like a mailman. This was furious. I rolled over half asleep, assuming it was some delivery screw-up or one of my dad's coworkers. Then my mom's voice cut through the house. "Cameron, come downstairs right now." She sounded terrified. I stumbled out of bed in sweatpants, eyes barely open. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I stopped cold. 2 cops stood at our door, uniforms crisp, badges reflecting the morning sun. My mom looked pale. My dad stood behind her with his arms crossed like he was already convinced I'd screwed up. "Cameron L. Carson?" one officer said. Yeah? You're under arrest." I actually laughed for a second because it sounded ridiculous. Wait, what? Before I could say anything else, they spun me around and cuffed me. The metal bit into my wrists. My mom gasped, reaching out like she could stop any of it. "What is going on? He's just a kid," the taller cop said, something about suspicion of assault, but I couldn't process it. My thoughts were flying all over the place. I tried to explain, to ask questions, but they just repeated the Miranda rights like robots. My dad's face went red. "What the hell did you do?" He barked. "I didn't do anything," I shouted, but no one cared. They marched me out past every window on the street. I swear I saw curtains twitch. My chest tightened. My pulse wouldn't slow down. I'd never been in a police car. Didn't know they smelled like a mix of plastic and old sanitizer. At the station, everything blurred. Fingerprints, mugshot, cold metal bench. Then they shoved me into a tiny interrogation room. One-way mirror, metal table, 2 chairs. I sat there trying to figure out if someone stole my identity, if they had the wrong Cameron, if this was some gigantic misunderstanding. After what felt like an hour, a detective walked in. Mid-40s, loosened tie, tired eyes. He dropped a thick folder on the table, thick enough to make my stomach twist. He gave a small smile, the kind that wasn't friendly at all. "Relax, Cameron," he said, taking the seat across from me. "We just want to hear your side." I nodded nervously. "Okay. About what?" He opened the folder. "About what happened last night at the Miller's house." My heart sank. What happened last night? He leaned back like this was routine. "You babysat. Kids went to bed. Susan came home around 8. Ring a bell? I didn't check the time," I said carefully. "But yeah, she came home a little before Mrs. Miller. She walked in, looked at me weird, then went straight upstairs. That's literally it." He scribbled something in his notebook. "That's it?" "Yes. I didn't even talk to her." He sighed like I was giving him the world's oldest excuse. "Well, Susan tells a different story." My stomach twisted. "What?" "She says you cornered her in the kitchen and made her uncomfortable, that you said things that scared her." I stared at him like he'd grown another head. "What?" "No, she went straight upstairs. I didn't move from the living room." He nodded slowly, pretending to empathize. Then he pushed a paper cup of water toward me. "Listen, I get it. People make mistakes. If you admit to something small, maybe you misread a signal, got too close, we can work with that. Judges appreciate honesty." That's when it hit me like a slap. He wasn't trying to understand anything. He was trying to box me in. "I didn't do anything," I repeated, louder this time. His expression hardened. "Well, Susan's story hasn't changed once. Are you sure you want to stick to that version?" I stared down at the table, sweat running down my spine. "I'm telling the truth." The detective leaned forward, lowering his voice like we were sharing some dark secret. "The thing about the truth, Cameron, is it doesn't always match the evidence." "You sure you want to keep digging this hole?" "What evidence?" I snapped. "She's lying." He didn't bother responding. He just stood up, gathered his notes, and walked out, leaving me alone with the buzzing fluorescent light and a knot in my stomach. When they finally released me on bail later that evening, my mom was waiting in the lobby. Her face was blotchy, eyes red. My dad stood rigid beside her, arms locked across his chest, jaw tight enough to crack a tooth. The drive home was suffocatingly silent until my dad finally exploded. "What the hell is wrong with you?" "I didn't do anything," I said again, my voice cracking, making me sound guilty even though I wasn't. "Then why would she say it?" he shouted. "Why would she lie?" "I don't know." My mom twisted around in the passenger seat, tears in her eyes. "Cameron, just tell us the truth," she whispered. "I am telling the truth." When we pulled into the driveway, my dad slammed the door so hard the whole car shook. My mom stayed back and grabbed my hand before I could get out. Her eyes were full of something I hadn't seen in years, pure fear. "I know you didn't do this," she whispered. "We'll fix it. I promise." Those words were the only thing holding me together. But promises don't hold much weight in a small town. Because by the time we stepped inside, people were already whispering outside our house, pretending not to stare. News spreads at lightning speed around here. That night, I sat on my bed staring at my phone, waiting for someone, anyone, to text me. No one did. It's wild how your entire life can collapse without a single spark. I learned fast, innocence doesn't matter. All people need is a rumor. By the end of the week, everyone knew. The story spread like dry brush catching flame. In a town this small, your business becomes everyone's entertainment. At first, I tried convincing myself the rumors would fade. Surely people would wait for facts, but that was laughable. The neighbors who used to wave at me wouldn't even look in my direction. Mrs. Kinnear from across the street literally dragged her kids inside whenever I walked past. Then I got the email from my college. Temporary suspension pending investigation. That one nearly broke me. I'd worked my ass off to get there, and now I was barred from classes with one sentence. I tried calling friends. Most ignored me. The one who finally picked up, my best friend Jason, answered after my third call. "Man, I heard," he said quietly. Finally, someone who might believe me. "Jason, it's not true. You know I'd never—" "I know," he cut in quickly. Then his voice dropped. "But dude, this whole thing is bad. People are talking. My parents are freaking out. I just think maybe you shouldn't call me for a while." I froze. "So that's it?" He sighed. "It's not that I don't believe you. I gotta think about my reputation. You know how people are." That sentence felt like a punch straight to the gut. "I get it," I said softly, even though I didn't. "Take care." He hung up. That was the end of years of friendship. After that, I stopped reaching out. There wasn't anyone left to call anyway. Tension at home got worse every day. My dad barely spoke except to bark orders or pressure me to confess. He started drinking more, pacing the living room like he was trying to grind a trench into the floor. One night, he snapped. He barged into my room while I was scrolling through old texts, trying to distract myself for even a minute. His face was flush, jaw trembling. "I just talked to Mark from work," he said. "He told me everyone's talking. About you, about our family. You've embarrassed all of us." I stood up, trying to stay calm. "Dad, I didn't do anything." "Then why the hell would she lie?" he shouted, slamming his hand on the doorframe. "What does she get from that?" "I don't know. Maybe she's mad or—" He cut me off. "You always have an excuse. I'm done. Pack your things. You're not staying here." I stared at him. Hoping for my mom to step in. She stood behind him, hands shaking. "Dad, please," I said. "Where am I supposed to go? Anywhere but here." He turned and stormed off. My mom stepped forward, tears spilling. "He's angry," she whispered. "He's just scared." "Scared of what?" "That people will think his son is a monster." She didn't say anything else, just hugged me tight. "Come with me," she said softly. We walked to her car in silence. She didn't explain where we were going. She just drove, turning down streets I'd never seen her take. Eventually, we reached the outskirts of town. We drove in silence for almost an hour, and when she finally turned off the main road, I realized we were far outside town. Hidden behind a row of tall, aging pine trees was a small, single-story house. The paint was peeling, one of the shutters hung sideways, and the porch steps looked like they'd collapse if you breathed too hard. "This was my mom's place," she said quietly, pressing a key into my hand. "No one's lived here since she passed. It's not fancy, but stay here until things settle down." I opened my mouth to protest, to tell her I couldn't accept something like this, but one look at her face told me it wasn't up for debate. She helped me unload my few bags and carry them inside. The house smelled like old wood and dust, the furniture ghosted under white sheets, every floorboard groaning with age. But it was silent, and for the first time in days, I felt like I could actually breathe. She went around, cracking open windows, letting in fresh air and weak sunlight. "I'll bring groceries tomorrow," she said. "And I'll make some calls. We'll find a decent lawyer, one who actually gives a damn." "Mom," I whispered, my throat tightening, "you believe me, right?" She stopped, turned, and stared at me like I'd just asked whether the sky was real. "Of course," she said. "You, my son, I know who you are." That hit harder than anything else. When she left, I sank into the old couch and listened to the house creak with the wind. It felt lonely, but in a strange way, peaceful. That first night was brutal. Every tiny noise made my heart jump. I barely slept, replaying everything over and over. The arrest, the interrogation, Susan's empty expression that night. It looped endlessly, like a nightmare stuck on repeat. The next morning, just like she promised, Mom showed up with arms full of groceries. Bread, milk, canned soup. She'd brought a cheap prepaid phone too, just to be safe. She tried to smile, but her eyes were tired. She stayed for a while, mostly sitting beside me while I forced down breakfast. She didn't talk much, just little things. "Try to sleep, I'll be back soon." I could tell she was keeping herself together only because I needed her to. Days blurred by, long, silent, heavy. Mom visited every couple of days, always glancing around before knocking, as if someone might be watching. My dad never came, not once. The only thing keeping me from unraveling was my mom's certainty. Every time she looked at me, I saw it. The belief that I wasn't the monster people said I was. When everyone else turned away, her voice was the only one that still felt human. A month after the arrest came my preliminary hearing. The actual trial wouldn't start until months later, but that morning in the courthouse hallway, my hands wouldn't stop sweating. Every time the big wooden doors swung open, I saw familiar faces, neighbors, old teachers, all waiting, not for justice, but for drama. When they finally called my name, everything inside me dropped. The courtroom was full. Susan sat at the witness table with her lawyer, hair neatly pulled back, wearing a soft sweater that made her look gentle and fragile. I'd never seen her look so polished. She started testifying. She broke into tears almost immediately. Real or staged, I couldn't tell anymore. She claimed that when she came home that night, I was already in the kitchen, waiting, blocking her way, saying things that terrified her. She said she froze, too scared to scream, and ran upstairs as soon as she could. Every pause, every crack in her voice landed exactly where she wanted it to. The jury stared at her like she was made of glass. Then she twisted the knife, said she once thought I liked her but later realized I'd only pretended to be kind just to get close. The same thing she'd said months ago, flipped completely on its head. My hands clenched the table until my knuckles turned white. My lawyer, Frank, a worn-out middle-aged guy who looked more tired than confident, whispered, "Don't react." But how could I not? Hearing her rewrite the truth, watching everyone nod like it all made perfect sense, felt like being shoved out of my own life. Then came the line of people. Neighbors, acquaintances, strangers with opinions. A woman said she always sensed something off about me. A guy from high school claimed I was too friendly with kids. Someone from college mentioned I'd been quieter lately, as if being withdrawn was some kind of confession. No evidence, no facts, just feelings. And somehow that was enough. Finally, it was our turn. Frank stood and said, "Your Honor, there should have been footage from the Ring camera outside the home which could verify my client's movements." The room shifted. For the first time, something felt like it might actually help me. But before hope had time to settle, Mrs. Miller was called up. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her voice shook as she said, "The Ring camera hasn't worked in weeks. The lens cracked during a storm. My husband was supposed to replace it, but he didn't." My stomach dropped. Just like that, the one thing that could have saved me evaporated. The prosecutor, slick suit, perfect haircut, and a voice made for talking over people, jumped on it immediately. "Well, isn't that convenient?" he said, loud enough that the jury didn't miss a syllable. "The only thing that could have shown what really happened. Gone. Broken. Lost." Frank objected, but the judge brushed it off with a bored move on. And that was it. No video, no hard evidence, just her story versus mine. When it was my turn to testify, I told the truth as plainly as I could. I explained how Susan came home shortly before her mom saw me, acting a bit off, then went straight upstairs. How I stayed in the living room the entire night. How Mrs. Miller came home later, paid me like always, and nothing seemed unusual. I tried to keep my voice steady, but I could feel Susan's stare drilling into me the whole time, blank, icy, like she was daring me to slip up. The prosecutor ripped me apart. "So you expect this jury to believe she just invented all of this?" "Yes," I said, "and why would she do something like that?" I hesitated. "Because I rejected her months ago." The whole courtroom reacted like I'd dropped a bomb. Susan's expression twisted into some perfect picture of shock, like I'd accused her of something vile. The prosecutor smirked. "So now she's framing you because of a bruised ego? That's your explanation?" I wanted to yell. "It's the truth," but none of them cared. By closing arguments, I already knew where this was heading. The prosecutor puffed himself up and delivered this theatrical speech about broken trust, innocence violated, and how parents deserve safety and reliability. I wasn't even a person to him. I was a symbol, a villain to point at. Frank tried. He talked about the lack of evidence, the inconsistencies, the reasonable doubt, but reasonable doubt had no weight tag. Ainst a crying 19-year-old girl and a town that decided my guilt before the trial even started. The jury left to deliberate. They were gone maybe an hour, not long enough for a real lunch. When they returned, not one of them looked at me. The foreman stood, cleared his throat, and said the word I'll never forget, guilty. Everything froze. I couldn't move. Behind me, my mom let out this small broken sob, like she was trying not to collapse. My dad stood up, stiff and silent, and walked straight out of the courtroom. Didn't say a word, didn't look back. The judge's voice felt far away, muffled, like he was speaking underwater as he read the sentence. 4 years in state prison? 4 years for something I never did. The official sentencing hearing happened a few weeks later. Same judge, same expression, same 4 years. A week after that, they put me on the bus, wrist shackles, ankle shackles, a long ride through miles of empty land. The guy next to me kept humming under his breath. Every bump made the chains clatter. When we finally rolled through the prison gates, the noise hit first. Metal slamming, guards barking orders, voices echoing off concrete walls. The first week was chaos. Non-stop noise. Yelling, stomping, doors crashing shut. Even sleeping didn't give you peace. The air smelled like sweat, metal, and bleach. I was 18. I had no idea how to survive a place like that. The guards didn't bother explaining anything. Hands at your sides, eyes straight, no talking. You learned by watching, and if you messed up, you learned even faster. By day 3, everyone knew my supposed crime. That's how prison works. Stories spread faster than fire. I was the kid sitter. That was all anyone needed to twist it into something worse. "Hey, that's the babysitter," someone muttered as I passed in the lunch line. Another guy snickered. "Keep him away from the new fish." I tried to ignore it, but there's nowhere to hide when everyone's trapped in the same cage. The first fight came out of nowhere. I was carrying my lunch tray when someone slammed into me hard enough to spill everything. I turned to apologize, but the guy smirked. "Watch it, babysitter." Before I could respond, he shoved me again. Then came the punch, right to the face. My vision burst white. I hit the ground, tray clattering away. The guards didn't step in. They watched. One of them even smiled. I stood up bleeding and dizzy, swallowing humiliation. That night, I slept with one eye open. A few days later, it happened again, this time in the yard. 2 guys circling me, throwing insults. I tried walking away, but one grabbed my shirt. "You think you're better than us?" he growled before slamming me against the fence. The rest is a blur. Next thing I remember, I was waking up in the infirmary with a swollen eye and a split lip. The nurse didn't ask what happened. She just handed me painkillers and told me to leave. That was when it sank in. I was completely on my own. Then came Rudy. Older guy, maybe late 40s. Gray in his beard. Walked with this calm, almost patient confidence that made him seem out of place in all the chaos. The first time I crossed paths with him, I was in the laundry room scrubbing dried blood out of my shirt from the latest beating. "You keep rubbing like that, you're just making the stain worse," he said, still focused on the machine in front of him. I didn't reply. I couldn't tell if he was mocking me or giving advice. Eventually he glanced over. "Relax, kid. If I wanted trouble, you'd know. That was it. Simple, uncomplicated." He didn't ask what I was in for, and I didn't ask about his past. We just worked beside each other, quiet, steady. After a while, he started dropping bits of wisdom like he wasn't even trying. "Keep your head down," he told me once. "Talk enough so people don't think you're hiding something, but not enough to give anyone ammo. And whatever you hear, don't react. Rumors will get you killed if you let them." I asked how long he'd been locked up. He shrugged. "Too damn long." Later, I learned he'd spent years fighting a conviction he swore was wrong. "The system doesn't defend you," he said one day. "Public defenders just shuffle paper so the judge gets home on time." Then he looked me dead in the eye. "You want to make it here? Remember who you really are, not the version they stuck on you." Rudy became the only person I trusted in that place. One afternoon, he found me staring into space while we worked. "You're thinking about your old life, aren't you?" He didn't ask. He stated it. I nodded. He sighed. "Stop. That world's gone for now. You live in here while wishing for out there you won't last." It hit harder than I wanted to admit. A few weeks later, I heard whispers that Rudy was getting transferred. Different facility, different state. He didn't even flinch when he told me. "They move you when you start getting too settled," he said. The morning he left, he handed me a folded scrap of paper, blank, and gave me a single sentence. "Don't let the truth die just because they buried you. No goodbye, just a nod," and then he lined up with the others and disappeared down the hallway. For weeks afterward, his voice echoed in my head whenever I started slipping into hopelessness. I began doing what he said. Every night, I wrote in the notebook my mom had mailed me, every detail from the night at the Millers, times, words, expressions, sounds, all of it. Maybe it wouldn't matter, but it made me feel like I still existed, like the truth wasn't dead yet. Life didn't get easier, but I did. The bruises healed, the stares never did, but I learned something. Real in that place, they could cage me, beat me, twist my name, but the truth still belonged to me. And because of Rudy, I wasn't going to let them bury it. 7 months. That's how long I stayed locked up before everything flipped. 7 months of steel doors, concrete beds, and wondering if the truth meant anything at all. Then one afternoon, a guard stopped at my cell. Carson, visitor. I assumed it was my mom. She never missed more than 2 weeks. But when I stepped into the visitation room, she was sitting beside a man I'd never seen. Clean suit, organized files, steady eyes. "Cameron," my mom said softly, standing to hug me. "This is Eric Wallace, your new attorney." Eric stood and shook my hand. I've reviewed your case, he said, and frankly, it's a disaster. You were failed at every stage. Your lawyer, the investigation, the prosecution. That stops now. I sat down, stunned. Why? Why would anyone suddenly care? He gestured toward my mom. Because she wouldn't let it go. She called me 3 times a week until I agreed to take this on. My mom's eyes were shiny, her smile small but real. Eric opened a folder. I'm rebuilding the entire case from scratch, everything, and I think we've found something. He told me about a neighbor, Mr. Long, who lived behind the Millers. He'd been overseas when the trial happened. He used a cloud sync security system that stored months of footage automatically. Nothing wiped, nothing overwritten. Before leaving the country, he had installed a new camera facing his driveway. No one realized that the edge of its view captured part of the Miller's porch and walkway. My heartbeat was hammering. Does it show anything? I asked. Eric nodded. Everything that matters. A few days later, he returned with a laptop. In a cramped meeting room, he played the footage. Timestamp 9:24 p.m., not the 8 p.m., she swore under oath. The video showed Susan walking up the driveway alone. Texting, relaxed, completely normal, no one behind her, no fear, no rushing. Then at 9:32 p.m., Mrs. Miller's car pulled in. A bit later, the footage showed me walking, backpack on, moving calmly toward my car. No panic, no confrontation, nothing out of place. Eric paused the video. Her entire claim, that you cornered her at 8 p.m. and she ran upstairs terrified, is impossible. She wasn't even home yet. My mom covered her mouth, tears spilling. I knew it, she whispered. But Eric wasn't finished. We also pulled the router's automatic sync logs. Their smart home system uploaded everything to their Google account. It shows her phone connecting at 9:25 p.m. and yours disconnecting at 9:35 p.m. As I stared at the paused frame on the screen, it felt unreal. The proof I'd begged for all those months. Right there. Eric looked over at me, his expression steady. We're filing a motion to overturn, and this time no one's twisting a damn thing. 2 weeks later, I walked back into a courtroom. No orange jumpsuit, no shackles, just a plain shirt and my mom's hope keeping me upright. Across the room, Susan sat with her attorney, pale and fidgeting. Mrs. Miller avoided looking in my direction altogether. Eric presented everything, the footage, the router logs, the cracks in Susan's story. Then he did something nobody saw coming. He called Mrs. Miller to testify. She looked nervous as she took the stand, glancing from Susan to the judge. Mrs. Miller, Eric began gently, when you got home that night, did your daughter seem upset? She swallowed. No. She was in her room, quiet. I thought she was asleep. So she didn't report anything to you that night? No, her voice wavered. Not until the next morning. Eric nodded. And when she did tell you, did her behavior seem strange? A long pause. She seemed angry, not frightened. Eric turned to the judge. So the alleged victim showed no fear, delayed reporting, and gave a timeline that contradicts the physical evidence. The prosecutor tried to object, but the judge motioned for him to continue. Eric pulled up the videos. Here's Susan coming home, calm alone, at 9:24 p.m. Here's Mrs. Miller arriving at 9:32. A few minutes later, my client leaves. No panic, no confrontation, nothing. When Susan took the stand again, she tried to hold herself together. But when Eric asked why her timeline didn't match, she froze. I must have gotten the time wrong, she whispered. An entire hour? Eric asked softly. Or did you lie? Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean for this to go so far. Then why say it at all? She broke. Because he embarrassed me. He turned me down, made me feel stupid. I just wanted him to notice me. I didn't think it would ruin his life. The courtroom went silent. My mom cried softly beside me. The judge looked furious. Are you admitting your testimony was false? Susan nodded miserably. Yes. The judge's voice was cold. Then this court vacates the conviction of Cameron L. Carson. You are released immediately. Ms. Miller, you will be taken into custody while the district attorney files charges for perjury. They removed my shackles on the spot. My mom rushed forward, hugging me so tight I couldn't breathe. You're free, she kept whispering. You're finally free. My dad stood at the back. He didn't say a word, just turned and walked out. Outside, the sky looked different, brighter, almost too bright. Breathing felt strange, like I'd been underwater for months and finally surfaced. Freedom didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. But it wasn't over. For the next year, Eric and I fought the civil case. One afternoon he called. They want to settle, he said. Money. And an NDA? No, I said instantly. They dragged my name through mud. I'm not staying quiet to protect her. Eric smiled at that. Good. I didn't want to take it either. Nearly a year later, the civil trial began. This time, I wasn't the one trembling. Susan walked in wearing a black suit and fake sorrow, pretending she was still the victim. She told the judge that the internet ruined her life after the truth came out. Eric didn't raise his voice once. He simply laid out the evidence. Again, footage, logs, her confession. Then he asked, "Did you file a false police report against my client?" Her voice cracked. "Yes." "And that report led to his imprisonment?" She nodded. That was all it took. The verdict came back, I won. Damages awarded. It was never about the money. It was about finally being able to walk around without people looking at me like a criminal. For once, people stopped whispering. Some apologized. Teachers, neighbors, people who had treated me like I was poison months earlier. I nodded, but deep down I knew no apology fixes 7 stolen months. My dad never showed up again. Word spread that the town mocked him for abandoning his own son. He couldn't handle it. Within weeks, my mom filed for divorce. She told him she'd never forgive him for choosing gossip over family. She started staying at my grandmother's old house, the one she'd given me when my dad threw me out. Some nights we'd sit on the porch, eating off paper plates, watching the sun go down. She'd tell me she was proud of me. I'd tell her I wouldn't have made it without her. I stayed in that house, fixed it up room by room, repaired the roof, patched the walls, cleared the garage. I started buying broken-down cars, restoring them, selling a few. Some nights I worked until midnight, covered in grease, and for the first time in a long time, life felt honest again. Sometimes I remembered Rudy, the inmate who kept me sane. His words stayed with me. Don't let the truth die just because they buried you. He was right. Those 7 months were gone forever. But the lie that stole them was gone too, and the truth finally outlasted it. If you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button. It helps us bring more stories your way. Thank you.